Thanks for giving a school the chance to say our side of the story. The answer really is that anybody can apply for a reduction, and everyone is considered seriously. It's not just a game. It's not just a form, but it costs money to educate your children. We want to be sensitive to the needs of the parents, but sometimes I'm wondering, what are you thinking when you're offering us $3,000 a year, divided by 170 days, divided by 8 hours a day? But I think parents are working so hard to pay tuition that nickel and diming them after they pay tuition, not only does it create a bad feeling, but it's wrong.
Today's topic is undoubtedly one of the largest expenses many people have in their lives, or better put, it's one of the largest investments you'll have, if not the most valuable investment of your life. We're discussing a line item, you may have heard of it, it's called tuition. Joining us is Mrs. Ahuvah Heyman, a seasoned school director. She oversees a girls' school with over 500 students. We spoke about the costs, the challenges, possible solutions, and more. And I'm sure you're going to have loads more questions when we're done, but we're trying. Mrs. Heyman's insights are both eye-opening and practical, and she gives you a behind-the-scenes look at how schools balance their budget while providing top-tier education. So, whether you're a parent, an educator, or simply curious about Jewish school tuition, this episode is for you. There's even a teachable moment in the middle of the episode when Mrs. Heyman's phone alerts. So be on the lookout for that. Without further ado, let's dive in. Being a Jew, awesome. Managing personal finances, not so awesome. Welcome to Kosher Money. I'm really excited about this episode. We're here with Mrs. Ahuvah Heyman, who came in special from Muncie, originally yesterday from Baltimore, to discuss tuition in a public setting. I mean, we're only a few people in the room, but this gets disseminated. And I just want to start, when I say school, in this instance, for the most part, it's synonymous with yeshiva, Jewish day school. I don't want people to come back to me on the particulars, but enough about that. Who are you? Introduce yourself. Tell everyone what you do day to day.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for having me, and thanks for giving a school the chance to say our side of the story. My name is Ahuvah Heyman. I work for a school, Benos Yisrael of Baltimore. It was started by the wonderful Mrs. Sarah Itzkowitz. We're entering our 25th year. We are a nursery through 12th grade, all girls, and we're basically set on our model of 2 classes per grade and 20 girls per class. So we're an intentionally smaller school, because we like to know every girl, but we're no longer small because altogether, Baruch Hashem, I think we have 585 students. Wow.
Like you look online, it says 480 and then you see 520. I wanted to ask that. So you're approaching 600 girls in this school.
But we're not looking to grow because right now we are 2 classes, nursery through 12th, and that's as big as we want to get.
Parents appreciate that, right? When it's intimate, do you find that the hesitance to grow is because maybe you'll lose a little bit of a handle on the intimacy and knowing each girl?
We know that if we get bigger, we won't be able to do it the way we do it. So we're committed to not getting bigger, which doesn't help, as far as income growth, but we're very committed to our cause, which is to know every girl and to help every girl feel successful in school.
So before we get into it, do you want to start with any disclaimers, right? You're a school director of a single school. Sometimes when someone comes on here, they might say, I'm not speaking for everyone, or maybe you are.
No, very much not. First of all, I'm the school director of a single small girls' school in Baltimore, Maryland. So it's very possible that the challenges and the triumphs that we have are not reflected in other schools, specifically in bigger communities when there's a lot more competition or a lot more costs. I know what I know only from my school. Also, I can tell you that we have an exceptional board, an exceptional Vad, Harabanim, so running the school is not complicated. That is why I feel comfortable to come here and talk about the school, because there's so much achdus, there's so much partnership, and we have been able to learn a lot of lessons, and we've been able to help other new schools with the lessons that we've learned. But I certainly cannot say that I represent, a New York school or a school on the West Coast, because we are in Baltimore, Maryland. So there's a lot of differences when you're in a small school in Baltimore, and because the nature of the organization is very united. So that leads to less issues where you might have issues. So I'm only speaking for Benos Yisrael of Baltimore, but I do think Just like I want to learn from other schools, I do think there's what to learn from our model. And I also think that we can all grow from each other's experiences,
I love that.
which is why I'm here.
Right. And I appreciate that because I don't know if I reached out to every school director, they'd all be eager to come on. And when I asked parents to come on, sort of do this somewhat debate style, a lot of the parents wrote in, but they were hesitant or scared to come on, even though they wanted to. So let's lean into that part of the discussion. What is it about school finances that had me picking the top 100 of 1,000 questions submitted, right? When I talk about it, even investing, I don't get this many questions. Is it because it's the number one expense in people's lives? Is it because it's the number one commodity? Their kids? Is it a mix? What's going on here?
So in my opinion, you're hitting people on their two most vulnerable spots, their children and their money. And you're doing it together. So you need to be super, super understanding and sympathetic and empathetic, but you also need to run a school. So I get it. It's really hard to have a big family nowadays and to pay a lot of tuition. It's hard, but we need to have this conversation because there's a whole nother side to it, and that's the school side.
When people were writing these questions in, I couldn't help but feel sad because it sounds like there's a lack of clarity, a lack of peace of mind. I know it's a lot of money, but more than that, do you find that there may be a lack of communication between the parents and the schools, or is there what to improve in the communication? Because, and we'll get into the nitty gritty of the specifics about wanting to see school books and or whatnot, but like there's this underlying friction that I felt in the messages that I was receiving. I don't think it's being addressed. And this underlying friction seems to be rumbling. Okay,
so once you go back to that, I said you're dealing with their children and their money. I think communication has to be something every school works on consistently. Baruch Hashem, I have a few sons in different schools, and the gamut of communication is all the way from you never hear from them to you hear from them every week for money to you only hear from them on things that you need to hear from them about. And I think we all need to work better on that. Parents need to know what's going on. They need to feel like they are part of it. That doesn't mean they're part of the decision-making per se, but it means that they have a voice. If they have a complaint, if they need someone to talk to, when it comes to tuitions, do they have a voice? How does that voice work? How do we respect them at the same time, have an expectation from them? I think it's very hard for parents. It's a very big expense, and sometimes they might not get enough communication. So I think every school has to commit. It's the year 2024. Communication has become much easier and has become much more important, actually. And I think we need to commit to communicating better with our parents, who are our greatest stakeholders.
So if there's a parent out there that has ruminating thoughts, right? They have questions. They're not disrespectful in how they communicate, but they're hesitant to reach out and schedule a meeting and want to clear the air and have a question. You would be a proponent in initiating that conversation.
100%. I'd much rather a parent comes and sit down and we talk it out and they understand both perspectives than be upset. We always say it's so much easier for us to deal with something when you first feel a problem than when it becomes a major problem. So come talk to us. We have an open door policy. Most schools, I believe, are run by wonderful people who want to do the right thing, but they might not realize that you have an issue. They're very, very busy. I could tell you this of every school I've ever met. There's very few people doing many, many jobs at the top. So they're very busy. So they might not know the nuances of you being upset about the fact that it could be something minor, it could be something major. There's so many sensitivities here. But most schools want you to reach out, and you'll feel better after you reach out.
And this idea that if you reach out, it's just going to be a dead end. Is that true? Is that not true?
I haven't found that in any school that I've worked with. Not at all. The opposite. But you're going to have to reach out. You can't expect them to know. There's hundreds of families in every school, and each family is its own book and its own chapters and its own everything.
Some of the best ideas or changes, do you think, may have come from parents initially?
I'm a big believer in that. I always tell my parents every year at orientation, you have children in other schools. You might have siblings with children in other schools. We love ideas. Some of our best ideas came from other schools. And we all have to share. We're all holding in different places, but let's share our ideas and learn from each other. If
someone walked into the room right now and stopped this conversation and said, Ellie, tell me, Jewish schools, are they for-profit or nonprofit? Are they run by a single individual or a board? I would look at them and be like, I don't know. And I don't know if I'm super unique. Are Jewish schools, I guess with Benos, you mentioned the board, but are they for-profits, nonprofits? I really have no clue.
I think that community schools are nonprofits and they have a board of directors and they have a VAD. There's a whole new type of school which is privately owned. We see that much more in the New York, New Jersey area. I do not have a lot of experience with that, so I'd be the wrong person to ask.
Mm-hmm.
The schools that I deal with, they are nonprofits. We could talk about money for a long time and how much money it really takes to run a school. Having a good board, having good bylaws, having rules and regulations that you follow is critical. Otherwise, you could get stuck with the same people for 20 years who mean well, but are not really changing with the times and learning how to help your school. Having a Vada Rabbanim is critical when questions come up. You need a place to turn to so that your school is running, al pi derech haTorah in a way that's of benefit to the students. And that should change by community. Different communities have different policies and things are different. But the schools I know, they are not for profit. They are not making a profit.
Mm-hmm.
And they're working very hard to pay their bills.
And in this nonprofit system with a board, is that sometimes, stationary names where really it comes down to one or two people that are navigating the nonprofit? Or are most schools that you've come across legitimately run by a majority vote from people who may or may not be involved day to day?
So if a school is running well, you don't need the board day to day. You only need them for big decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot say that every board member is intimately involved with the school because of the personalities of the people. Like anything else, you always have your doers and then you have your watchers, but they have to be available for vote. They're available for board meetings. They have to be available if any big decisions have to be made. But not everybody has the same personality and not everybody's going to be as involved. But it's very important not to have people who are just a name. And the way that you avoid that is you have terms and you stick to them.
My brother Yaakov behind the scenes told us that we have 38 hours of video on the memory chip. So I want to get into the costs of a school. This is not scientific data, but it's interesting to see the numbers in the tri-state area, even somewhat beyond, out of town, Baltimore, Miami, Atlanta. There are ranges, right? When you ask somebody in Borough Park what they're paying for tuition, they might say they're paying $5,000 a year, $4,000 a year before a break, right? And then someone in Lakewood hears that, oh, I'm paying $6,500 to $12,000. And then someone in the five town says, whoa, $6,500 to $12,000? I'm paying $15,000 to $17,000. And then someone in the five town says, oh, I sent to a modern Orthodox school. I'm spending $25,000. And then someone in Teanex's like, wait, I'm spending $35,000. So I guess the first question here is why the varying costs across the schools? What's going on there?
Well, there's a lot behind that answer. There's so many variables in what it takes to run a school. But in my experience, we're trying to get as close as possible to running the school without going into debt, while having an expectation from the parents that's realistic, while keeping up with the times as far as education, and as far as what I consider one of the most important things, and that's paying our teachers fairly. So in order to do all that, schools cost money. And in order to send your child to school, it costs money. Why one place can be cheaper than another, there's 1,000 variables. Do they own their building? Is it one building? Is it a campus? Is there competition? Do they have 32 kids in a class versus 20? There's so many variables. I would be much more interested to know, how are the books being kept? Who's reviewing the books? What kind of transparency is there? Mm-hmm. Is it really a school that's trying their best to align their needs with the needs of the parents? Or is it a school that's just going to charge as much as they can, regardless of the parents? And if that happens, then eventually you just lose touch with the parents. So I think that schools that are well run, that really try to align the needs and wants of the parents with the needs and wants of the school, they're getting closer and closer to the right number. Meaning when they assess a parent based on whatever process their school has, it's doable. So their numbers are real and their budget is real. And how many of them have a real budget and stick to that budget and monthly have a budget to actual and send it to their finance committee and make sure there are no surprises or no crises that throw them off. This is a real business, but it's a business of helping Hashem's children have an education. So you need to balance it with being a real business and being the Rahmanim that we are to make sure that our parents can afford to send their kids to school.
I'd imagine the varying costs is the level of education, the amenities, the state-of-the-art gymnasium, labs, things like that, which you may not have in a lower tuition school. When you take a step back and you're driving on the highway and you're just thinking to yourself, which is the only place you can probably
Maybe.
think to yourself, maybe, right? At some point, are the costs in some of the schools not in line with the value that we may be getting? Meaning, at some point, do you think that a school with the most beautiful campuses, right? The state-of-the-art laboratories, very, very small classes for, science and things of that nature. Do you find that the level of return is there for a school like that?
I don't really know schools like that. The schools that I know, people are working very hard. If we have a nice lab, it's a bonus. A beautiful state-of-the-art gym, it would be a bonus. Maybe somebody came up with money. Maybe somebody wanted to sponsor it. Most of our schools were just working hard to make it. And when you talk about levels of education, it's well known that high schools cost much more than the younger grades, because when you get into departmental and every 43 minutes you have a new teacher, that's another employee that you're taking care of. Whereas in first or second grade, a teacher is there half a day. So you have 2 teachers. And a high school class can have 15 or 20 teachers. So you really can't compare the cost of running upper grades to running lower grades. And I don't really find that we're expecting parents to take care of all those other things as much as we're expecting them to cover the cost of educating their child. And I highly doubt that most schools are getting the cost of educating that individual child. I know we're much lower than all the public schools in our area. And for sure in other states, I think we're just trying our best to make it work.
I was blown away. I'll show you a chart. Maybe we'll put it on the screen. We're not going to say the school name, but if you look at the amount of money, payroll, right? I personally don't think of this, but it says Limudei Kodesh, the Hebrew payroll in this large school with 2 or 3 classes, $4.3 million. And then administrative and fundraising, $3.2 million per year. Secular studies, $1.49 million. Operational expenses, $3.3 million. Mentoring and chavrusas, $1.1. I would imagine there are so many line items in running a school that parents may not be familiar of. What are some of them, when you think of the costs that parents don't think too much of?
Okay, so first of all, you have to realize that if you send your child to school, there's a team of people taking care of your child. You might see a teacher who welcomes your daughter. I'm going to say daughter because it's a girls' school. But actually, it's a team of people. There are principals, there are assistant principals, there are coordinators, there are learning center. Learning center is a big part. There's the mental, emotional, we call it social emotional division. Huge, involved in your child. There's the gym teacher, there's the art teacher, there's the music teacher. There's so many people. There is a team making up your child's day. And then all the people that you don't see. There's the people running the building. Huge expense to run a building. There's the people cleaning the building. There's the people fixing the building. There are the people involved in feeding your child. There are so many different people on this team. And yet people look at it like, oh, they have a teacher. They're just another class. They're just another chair. I once had a father tell me, she's just another peanut butter sandwich. And I was like, no, she really isn't. If we take your daughter into our school, it's because we want an entire team working to help your daughter feel and be successful. It's not just another peanut butter sandwich. And it's certainly not just another desk.
When you think about the current system, we're living in inflationary times. Everything costs more money. What can we do to create solutions, right? Where I'd imagine more and more people need breaks because wages aren't necessarily going up with the growing costs of everything. What do you do as a school director? How do you approach that? And what are practical solutions to help give breathing room to so many families?
Well, the answer really is that anybody can apply for a reduction and everyone is considered seriously. It's not just a game. It's not just a form, but it costs money to educate your children. I once had one of the Rabbanim in our Vad tell a parent that schools cost money. Maybe in our dar, that's our nisayon, that we have to pay a lot of our money to educate our children. Baruch Hashem, I have many children. And the reason I work in a girls' school is because I first had 5 daughters and I wanted to help pay their tuition. And then I had 5 sons, and Hashem's, smiling down at me because I don't work in a boys' school. So every year I'm the other side of that as well, dealing with 5 different tuitions, 5 different schools, and it's a huge responsibility. So we want to be sensitive to the needs of the parents. But sometimes I'm wondering, what are you thinking when you're offering us $3,000 a year, divided by 170 days, divided by 8 hours a day?
Mm-hmm.
And we know for a fact, and I know this because I do it myself, camp, which now is a necessity, people don't blink that they might pay more for camp than they're paying for a year of school. So we really need to write this, write it, right the wrong. We need parents to understand that 170 days of school, which equals a lot more than 170 days of work, is a huge part of their child's day and year. And we need to do everything in our power to pay as much as we can in tuition so that on the flip side, the schools can do as well as possible by our children. And let's talk about salaries for a minute. A few years ago, we made a conscious effort. We're in the middle of a 4-year plan. You cannot expect anyone to be a teacher a half a day for $22,000. It's not possible. They cannot feed their family. We have to raise teacher salaries so people want to be teachers and so that they walk away from being a teacher saying, I can make this work for my family. They're never going to become rich from it. But shouldn't they be able to buy groceries? So all these pieces come together into your tuition bill. But when people see their bill, they're like, this is nuts. This is so much money. It's true, but maybe that's what you should be spending the most money on right now, because you know how important it is for your child to have a good school experience. And we all know as parents, if your child does not have a good school experience, life is really difficult. And it's really complicated. So if me partnering with my child's school and understanding the need for me to partner with them in tuition is going to help, I'm not going to say that's everything. Obviously, it starts at the home, it ends at the home. But if this is going to help, I should look at it as a priority. I should want it to be where my money's going because the schools are working very, very hard. And there's no way that full tuition is covering the costs of running the school. It's not.
How are the schools bridging the gap? Is that donations?
Fundraising. Fundraising is so huge. We spend so many days and nights fundraising, reaching out, cultivating relationships. We work really hard so that the parents who can't pay full tuition, we're going out and raising that difference. When someone gets a tuition break, that money doesn't go away. The need doesn't go away. The need comes back in the form of fundraising. So if somebody was asked to pay $12,000 and they want to pay $6,000 and we agree to the $6,000 because they really don't have more than that, where do they think the other $6,000 comes from? It comes from us going, knocking on doors, making events, speaking to people, because that $6,000 has to be raised. The cost per child is more than tuition. So how are we going to function if we don't raise the difference? And I think sometimes parents don't realize that. We're not saying names, we're not saying numbers, but we're going out and raising money because we gave you a break. And we're happy that we gave it to you. But the money doesn't just appear, or the need for the money doesn't just disappear.
Is it harder for a girls' school to fundraise versus a boys' school?
It is.
It is.
We don't need to go into all the technicalities of parents who feel like boys must get an education and maybe girls not as much, but boys can charge more. Boys' schools can charge more and get more. And girls' schools, by their very nature, have to charge less and they get less.
We'll be right back to our Kosher Money episode, though I have a question for you. Are you ready to experience a whole new level of comfort in your wardrobe? Let me introduce you to Twillory, the brand I've been telling you redefines what it means to look and feel your best no matter the occasion. Twillory's not just about dress shirts anymore. They've taken an innovative approach to comfort and applied it to the entire wardrobe. What do I mean? Let's talk about their air suit and air shorts. They are game changers. The air suit is unlike anything you've ever worn. It's designed with incredible technology that makes it lightweight, breathable, and insanely comfortable. Whether you're heading to a meeting, a wedding, or just need a nice suit for Shabbos, the air suit adapts to your body, keeping you cool and comfortable. Imagine a suit that moves with you, keeps you feeling fresh all day, and looks impeccable. Oh, and let's talk about the air shorts. Those are perfect for the warmer days when you want to stay sharp without overheating. Goes great with one of their polos. The shorts are made from the same high-performance fabric as you see in the air suit, giving you the same breathable, moisture-wicking comfort, who doesn't want that, in a casual, stylish package. So why wait? If you're listening to this in August 2024, they have a warehouse sale. If you're listening to this after August 2024, they always have incredible sales. Click around their website, take a look at twillory.com/koshermoney, And use the promo code CHAI, which is 18. You get $18 off your order of $139 and more. I believe it's free shipping, free returns. Trust me, once you try Twillory, you'll wonder how you've ever lived without it. As we move through 2024, many people are looking for and cashing in on tax deductions, which is why I've been telling you what more and more people are doing. They're putting money into a charitable entity without actually having to allocate the money to a specific cause right away. So how does it work? I'll tell you. It's called the Donors Fund. You create an account in under 60 seconds, and any money that's placed in the account is instantly eligible for an immediate tax deduction. You can then decide throughout 2024 and beyond where you'd like to allocate that money. It's absolutely free. No hidden charges, no funny business. If you love running around, pulling your hair out, trying to find your donation receipts across dozens of organizations, the Donors Fund is not for you. If you want everything streamlined in a single place, the Donors Fund is for you. All your donations, one button away. We're talking about a robust online platform, a super friendly mobile app. It features a bank-like system for your charitable giving. You can also invest the dollars to grow as you determine which charity to allocate the funds to. They offer checkbooks, debit cards, caring customer service, and more. So here's what to do. Visit thedonorsfund.org/koshermoney, links in the show notes, and create your account. Click around their website to learn more about it. The Donors Fund. Welcome to the future. And now back to this week's episode. What do you say to somebody who walks in and says, this is hard for me? I can do it, but I just want you to know this is very difficult for me to make those monthly. I don't want a break, but I'm going to do it because I think it's important. Or I used to be getting a break, but I think I can do it now, and I'm going to try to pay full. What's your message to people who do that?
I am so respectful and so grateful that you are partnering with us in this way. It really makes a difference, and we're so appreciative. I have a policy that the first 2 weeks of school, I send a personal letter to every parent paying full tuition. We do not take it for granted. We know it's not simple, but it is so appreciated, and we count on them, and we need them.
And what's your message on the flip side to somebody who may have been getting breaks, things are doing better, but it's just by rote. They're like, okay, I'm going to, continue getting that break, but I could probably be chipping in more.
So we have a policy that if your income changes by $30,000, we'd like to know.
Mm-hmm.
Either way. Because what if you were making it work and you have a change at work? We'd like to help you. But if you have a change for the better, we'd also like to benefit. We're trying to run a school.
Mm-hmm. I want to get into the tuition committee process a little bit. And I'm going to tell you 2 questions, how they were positioned to me, but they're somewhat similar. One person writes, can the tuition committee process be made less invasive / embarrassing for families? Another person writes, the school yeshivos that we send to our kids to use facts for financial aid applications. Filling out the very specific and sometimes very personal information is very stressful and feels like an overstep of boundaries. I personally feel resentment towards the school because of these yearly applications, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I wonder why schools cannot simply determine eligibility for financial aid based on family size and tax returns, which they require as part of the application anyways. So it's just interesting how 2 people, similar, and one is very descriptive and the other one is embarrassed, where the other one feels like they've been attacked.
Okay, so let's go back to what I said in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's your children and your money. Can you think of 2 things you'd be more sensitive to than those? But the next part, I'm just going to make a disclaimer. I'm only speaking for my school. We worked this year to update the process for tuition reduction to take out the questions that we thought were absolutely not necessary. Mm-hmm. Everyone needs a car nowadays. Mm-hmm. And there are some people who want to buy a car that's not going to break down for $800. And that's okay. I'm fine with that. As far as facts, there's a big problem with using facts in general because it's not geared towards a frum lifestyle. So I don't know many schools that use facts for assessments because it doesn't make sense. It's geared towards non-religious, non-Jewish institutions who don't have the same needs and expenses as a frum family nowadays. So I really think facts is not the way to go. And I really think schools should be more sensitive. We took out the question about a cleaning lady. Mm-hmm. If both parents are working, it's very shaykh that they need help to make it work. And we're okay with that. We took away, what kind of cars do you have? We just want to know how many cars you have. We don't want to know what type, because I felt that was invasive. We took away, do you send your kids to summer camp? Summer camp is pretty much a necessity nowadays if both parents are working. What are you supposed to do with your children? So there's a lot of ways for schools to make it less invasive. There's a lot of ways for schools to be more understanding. But just asking how many children you have and what your income is not enough. For example, I, Baruch Hashem, have 10 children. 5 of them are married. That changes the dynamic completely. It could be I'm still helping some of them. It could be I'm not. It's not enough to know how many children I have and what my income is. If anything, if you would look just at that, I should pay less. But there's more to the story. How many of them live at home? How many of them are still in school? What are you actually paying for? And also when I see somebody, Baruch Hashem, that has many dollars put away in their 403B and their 401k and their this and their that, some part of me wants to say you also need to think about your child's school. It's not okay that you're just thinking about that. You have to take some of that money and give it back to today because I think that's reasonable. Now, if somebody has $40,000, $50,000 put away, I'm not talking about that. We're talking about multiple hundreds of thousands or over millions. And then they're asking for a reduction. So I value that they're being honest, but I kind of need them to flip the script a little. If you're able to put away, you need to be able to invest in today also.
What's stopping the schools from not asking any questions? This is a layup for you. This is a slam dunk, but I'm gonna ask it because I think it's important. What's stopping the schools from just asking, do you feel you need a break? Do parents, it doesn't sound like they're being malicious or deceptive. It sounds like they may not know whether or not they're entitled or in need of a break, right? Because if you just said, hey, parents, do you need a break? Yes, no box. Yes. If they say yes, let's go. Give a break. Where's the...
Give a break without knowing all the details?
Yeah, correct. Meaning because the parents said they need a break.
So I'm sorry, but then you have to get into really what becomes more personal, and that's standard of living and all these different kinds of things. And did you put on a $600,000 addition, which might have been important, but how does your school suffer because of that? Are you sending your kids to colleges and seminaries that cost $30,000? So this year you're offering us $3,000 less than last year. Why is that fair to us? There's so many pieces here. It's so personal. And I get it. We don't want to be invasive. And we actually started something, and I would encourage more schools to do this. If parents applied for a tuition reduction last year and they went through the process and nothing has changed, more than $30,000 either way, they don't have to apply this year. We're just going to give them what last year was, plus the small jump, usually 3 to 4%, which I think is reasonable. No school should look for unreasonable jumps. Parents aren't prepared. It really is overwhelming for them. But if it's a reasonable jump and we're not making you go through the process at all, and everybody wins, schools should look at things like that. They should look at ways. And by the way, I want to go back to communication. If parents are communicating effectively with the school, and really if the school is effectively communicating with the parents about tuition, about responsibilities, about the process, every parent should feel the opportunity to ask for help if they need it. No parent should be scared of the process. It could be they won't get as much as they asked for. It could be they won't walk away saying, wow, I got cut in half. But nobody's ignored. Everybody deserves a conversation. Everybody deserves an opportunity. And you have to remember on the other side are also people just trying their best.
After you go through all of that, right, you have all the answers. Is there a formula to decide how much someone gets? Is it really dependent on the situation? How do you think about and how much time are you spending deciding who, what, how much?
We're spending a lot of time trying to understand that family situation and also factoring for ourselves if they also have some special education needs or some therapy needs. A family that's doing fine can be absolutely upended by a great need that was unexpected, or one child that needs a special school or things like that. So we're trying to look at the whole picture. At the same time, we're trying to be partners. You can't expect school to not cost money.
A question that has bubbled up a few times from a few different people was people wanting to know how much of their full tuition, if any of it, is helping to pay for somebody who may not be getting a break. Is that the case? And
it's not the case.
It's not the case.
Remember what I just said. Yeah. Full tuition does not cover the cost of fully taking care of your child.
In your school.
In most schools. It's just a fact. The same way your cost of eggs went up, our gas and electric bill in a school went up, I can't tell you how much, 20% in the last 3 years. Water, 20%. All these are part of what makes a school a school. Our expenses have gone up, aside from salaries, which we want to go up. There are costs we don't want to go up. Let me use our workman's comp, for example, which, thank God, I don't think we've ever really used it. We're talking about thousands upon thousands of dollars increase a year because of the nature of the world, especially when you start being a religious school and then you have Perhaps you have security on site. The numbers just skyrocket. So all these costs get folded in to the cost of educating a child.
The school before had this letter that they sent to parents, and they said, few are fully aware of the astronomical costs involved in running yeshivas, reflecting numerous types of obvious and hidden types of expenses and the staggering amounts that are involved. Almost as an aside, how often does one appreciate that the majority of a child's waking hours and the related costs are spent in yeshiva, and as a child matures, his time in yeshiva only increases? Someone asked me, when you look at elementary costs and then the jump to high school, they feel that the jump to high school is so much more. And yeah, okay, the hours are a bit more. Why the increase in that jump? They feel that it's much higher. Is the quality of the education higher? What's the reason for that?
There's a few reasons. But first of all, I explained in the beginning, when you have 2 teachers for a 3rd grade classroom versus 25 teachers for a 9th grade classroom, your expense to run the high school is so much higher than your expense to run elementary. At the same time, there's a lot more programming that goes on in high school. We're trying to be a place where girls can feel good in and out of school. And we don't want what the world has to offer to be influencing them. So we're doing a lot of programming, and programming costs money, and it results in an increased cost. But honestly, a good school, it should be a jump, but it should be a fair jump. You cannot expect that a parent is paying $10,000 for middle school and $15,000 for high school.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not fair. And also, if there's going to be a jump, parents have to be made aware of that. So it's easy for us because we're a K through 12, we're nursery through 12, we're
Right.
K through 12 accredited. So the chart shows 1st and 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, middle school, high school. And it's a very gradual increase, but there's an increase. I just want to go back to something you said before for a minute because I didn't address it directly. You're not paying for someone else's tuition reduction. We are going out to raise that money. And when we talk about the math, let's just do the simplest math. 170 days of school divided by an average of 8 hours a day. Do the math, see how much you're actually paying per hour. What you'll discover is you're going to pay more for a babysitter. And unfortunately, for childcare for the younger kids, you're paying double or triple what you're paying for your child to be in school. So all these costs really matter. And sometimes parents don't break it down in a way that makes sense to them, but they really should, because then you'll see, what? It's only X per hour? Wow. That's nuts. Or wow, that's not a lot of money. And those hours, every single one of them, your child is being taken care of by that whole team that we discussed.
I listened to a phenomenal share. It was more of a halacha share, where the rabbi was going through the Jewish laws of whether or not a school or yeshiva is required, or any nonprofit is required, to open their books, trust from the community. There's a bunch of different machlokasim on it. But I want to lean into that because the question came up a bunch, and I'd love to hear your answer. If a parent asks for a tuition break, the school is entitled to ask the parents to open up their books and review the family's tax returns. Why then, when a parent pays full tuition, are they not entitled to ask the school to do the same? There's no question a portion of the full amount of tuition is going towards, okay, so you combated that. But do you get that? Are people as brazen to ask you directly?
I've never had that question. However, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I think that organizations that are supported by the Colel need to be somewhat transparent, obviously without names of donors and things like that. We have a finance committee. I'm not sure all boards do this, but once a month we have a report budget to actual, and our finance committee reviews it. I spoke about this earlier. Absent real catastrophes, God forbid, like a fire or a broken boiler, which costs you a few $100,000, every school should be attempting to stay within budget. And if you stay within budget and your budget is prepared before the year begins, then you shouldn't have a problem being transparent. And we've been very open about the fact that over the past few years, we've increased our staff salary significantly. And we're proud of that. But that takes, on the other end, a significant more amount of fundraising. It doesn't happen on its own. We're heading into year 3 of 4. Our goal after year 4 is our teachers can work half a day and feel like they can support their family. And girls should really want to go back into teaching, as opposed to all the other professions that they want to go into that takes them away from their family. There's something very beautiful about having the same schedule as your children. And if your children need you, your boss says, go home. Your child comes first, as opposed to you're stuck at work, the job that you needed to support your family, but they're not aware of the needs of your family, and they don't really care about the needs of your family. Now, I'm not telling people what to do. I'm just saying consider the bigger picture, because at the end of the day, a mother having the same schedule as her children and being involved in the job that helps her children, it's priceless. Obviously, you have to be able to afford that. So our goal is to raise salaries to a point where people can feel like they could have both.
And on behalf of the employers, I'm sure there are many employers that do
I am
care,
sure.
right? Right.
I am sure, but it becomes very complicated when you're pushed into a job that doesn't understand and that doesn't want to hear. And so then, I've had the experience where I called a woman and said, your child has a fever and needs to be picked up. And she says, oh, call my husband in yeshiva. And I feel bad. I feel bad because the whole reason you went out to work, and we're not going there, this is obviously a very, very different discussion. You went out to work so your husband could stay in yeshiva, but the place where you're working might not be understanding of that. And I'm not saying people shouldn't have jobs and they shouldn't earn as much as possible. I'm just saying try to balance it so that your family also could be a priority for your kids. But this is not judgmental. This is just a fact that unless the schools work harder to raise salaries, we're not going to have teachers, and we're not going to have girls who want to become teachers because we need to be competitive. We have to be.
Is the Benos sharing the numbers like on an annual basis to increase that transparency? Would it help increase transparency, or would it just create more questions like those budget, the line items?
I don't think sharing when you have nothing to hide is bad. I think sharing with people who don't understand what they're looking at could be a problem. But I've never had a parent ask me for the budget. And we talk in broad numbers. Like we say, over the past 3 years, our costs have increased by X and our salaries have increased by X. But really, anybody running a school, l'shem shemayim, and trying their best, what do we have to hide? And I for sure don't have to hide that our admin salaries are a high number, because they're not. Really, those people are having the most mesirus nefesh. Our principals and our coordinators, they're working their hardest, and they're definitely not making anywhere near what public school principals and coordinators are making.
Which is interesting because I want to talk about fees, or the additional fees on top of tuition. The U.S. government's fighting very hard against the Uber Eats of the world that are tacking on all these different fees, building fees, dinner fees, utility fees. Is that healthy to showcase all those different fees, or put it all into one number, make it the tuition, and just ship that single number? How do you think about that?
You're talking to the wrong person. You want to hear?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I can't stand when schools nickel and dime like that. I have one child who the school has like 6 extra fees. So Benos Yisrael has the following mahalach. It works for us. We have one tuition number, no other fees, and one building fee. That one tuition number needs to cover everything it costs us to educate your child other than special education. That means that every division is given a budget for specialty events and for supplies. And I do not allow any division to go back to a parent and ask for money. So other than high school Shabbaton, when your child is in Benos Yisrael from when they're 3 till when they hit high school, you should never be asked for money as something that's necessary for your child to participate in something. Never. It's not your problem that we need stamps to make a mailing. It's not your problem that we need apples to make apple cider. It's not your problem that we invite the man to make matzos. That's on us. And every division gets a budget, and every month they get a report. And it's hard to stick to that without asking the parents for money. But I think parents are working so hard to pay tuition that nickel and diming them after they pay tuition, not only does it create a bad feeling, but it's wrong. If you need to have a supply fee, and you need to have a book fee, and you need to have a security fee, give it all to me at once. Throw it all in. Let me work my hardest to pay you, but please stop nickel and diming. It's upsetting. It's hurtful. It's hard. If someone has multiple children and they're getting a letter, send in $4 for laminating and send in $8 to make a chauffeur. Well, they're paying tuition. They're working really hard to pay you. You really have to be sensitive to that. And on the flip side, when you get the coordinators and the principals involved, that they own their budget and they're responsible to stick to it, and halavai, they all should, you know what happens? There's a greater responsibility and respect for the parents' money. And that's really what this is all about. Parents are working hard. Schools are working hard. Let's look at ourselves as a team, working together to make it happen. And when I get a bill and then 7 other fees, it doesn't feel like a team. It feels like you're just thinking of every way to charge me. Just charge me more. I don't like hearing that they're doing this and then it costs more money, or they're doing that and it costs more money. Figure it out for your sake and for my sake, so that I have a good feeling towards the school. And what we have found is many of the parents don't realize it. And sometimes we need to remind them, like, we're not charging anything. But the parents who get it, they really appreciate it. And I think it's important. I'd rather raise tuition a few $100s a year than come back to parents for these little things that add up very quickly especially if they have many children in different schools. You could be talking about 3 times a week that a parent has to come up with extra money. How are they supposed to if they're stretching themselves to give you your tuition? It really bothers me. And I think it's fixable. I think schools have to think bigger and they have to be more transparent with their parents.
There's this growing trend to turn the parents into fundraisers, right? To fundraise a certain amount of money towards that. Are you a proponent of that?
So once a year we have an event like that. And I find that it works very well because people give to people. So people have access to family and relatives that only they have access to. We're not going to have access to them. And when their daughter calls and says, I love my school and can you please give my school money? It works. But when that's over, like you can't expect parents to be your fundraisers. Also, you have to be very aware. I'm sure we all have this. 5 times a day I get these. Baruch Hashem, I have a big family. I have a lot of siblings. So it's your own personal decision. But yes, there is a time, probably once a year, where parents are your biggest advocates and your best connector to help you raise money for that year. And I'm happy to do it for my child's school in the limited ability that I have. But it's not something that if you don't do it, you're in trouble. It shouldn't be like that.
There's an inyan in tzedakah, as you well know, to give to those closest to you, people in your town. And I find it very beautiful when families are helping families, brothers, sisters, sister-in-laws, brother-in-laws. They're helping each other. Those who have more grandparents, I would imagine, are helping. Let's talk a little bit about that. Do you see that? And when families sort of stick together and help each other out, do you sense like a certain closeness in a family that is supporting each other?
Colel Yisrael is incredible like that. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a phone call. I want to help pay someone's tuition. Can you do it without them knowing? Can you just tell them they got a scholarship? Yeah, absolutely. Because our goal is not to make people feel bad and to make them feel like they're under this burden that they can't get out of. And there's so many great people in Colel Yisrael who just want to help. And at the same time, there's great people in Colel Yisrael who want to help teachers also. Very often I get a call, how can I help a teacher? How can I do this for a teacher? It's very special. It's very unique. And we should not take it for granted. And people should know that when we call upon the parents that one time a year, it's because we value our partnership and we feel like they value it as well. And they're there to help us out. And if somebody says they can't, they can't. I totally get it. My husband's a fundraiser himself for a different organization. He can't be the one fundraising for every cousin and nephew and niece that comes along because it interferes with his job. So we're understanding of that as well. But where that relationship is going to help us and where they're going to feel good about giving to a school that their family is involved in, Colel Chabad.
I love what Chazdei Lev is doing to support rebbeim and teachers.
Chazdei Lev is amazing.
It's just so nice to see a charity organization. I mean, there's so many there for others, but like supporting real heroes in the community. I love their feature that at any point you can just go on their website and just send what they call a tip or whatnot to the rebbeim. You don't have to drive down to the office, as a thank you or whatnot. But like just strengthening that muscle of showing gratitude to the somewhat forgotten rebbeim and the teachers, right?
So I love Chazdei Lev, and one of the things I respect them the most for is their policies, and they're very strict on their policies. So as far as a girls' school and Moros, it's not as broad or as helpful, but what they do for the rebbeim, and for some Moros, it would have to be that she's the primary breadwinner in her house. So not very many Moros fall into that category. So they don't benefit from all the Chazdei Lev things, but Chazdei Lev in general, the attitude that they have towards the rebbeim and the moros and the exposure that they give them so that other people will care about them. I think that's beautiful and wonderful. And again, I respect that they have policies that make it work. And that's where you come to, you want to be transparent. They have strict policies to make sure that the right people are getting their services. And it should be like that. Otherwise, ein ledaber sof.
I love this question. Someone wrote in, I always wondered, what would tuition need to be for the teachers and rebbeim to be paid what they're worth?
A lot more.
A lot more.
A lot more. A lot more. Let's be honest. Your average teacher, half a day, average is probably making in the low 30s. Average. So don't you think that should be double? Or triple? So that would require a lot more tuition.
Before we get back to the episode, I want to tell you about Chomesh. Have you heard about this? Let me back up. You're just a regular guy. You're trying to pay the bills, expenses are growing, and you're starting to panic just a little bit. you don't have very high expectations of making millions of dollars and you're just trying to get by. But I need to tell you something. Our commentators have a prescription for a better option. You continue doing what you're doing, but you give more charity, you give more tzedakah. Hundreds of people are taking the words of the Rush, who lived in the 13th and 14th centuries, to heart. The Rush says, quote, one who keeps Chomesh is promised wealth, end quote. So what is Chomesh? Chomesh is giving 20% of your post-tax earnings to charity, to tzedakah, not more than 20%. And it sounds like a lot, because it is. But before you continue on, it's worth reading the stories of blessings that have happened to people who have given Chomesh, given 20% of their post-tax earnings. There's a lot to know about Chomesh. There are sources, there are stories. I'm going to link to the website in the PDF of the how-to and those stories in the show notes. Take a look there, hop around. You can sign up if you are committed to giving 20% of your charity away, right? We know that there's a mitzvah to do 10%, but the promises of wealth are there for those that give more, according to the Sfarim HaKadoshim, according to the holy commentators. So you might be giving Chomesh already. The team at Chomesh would love to know just how you're doing it. And they have a sign-up link. You can sign up for this incredible movement. Even if you're not ready, you can visit the site. You can sign up for their informative newsletter. Again, these are a group of people, dedicated Jews, who are encouraging others to give 20% of their earnings to charity. And as they say, a Chomesh Yid is a wealthy Yid. Now, let's discuss Israel. If you donate to the poor in Israel, or anywhere else for that matter, do you know the first place they'll likely spend that money? It's at the grocery store. Since its inception in 1788, Colel Chabad's priority has been supporting nutrition security in the Jewish community. Many people in Israel face the prospect of going to bed hungry regularly, which is why the organization focuses on providing food and essential support to help people live with dignity and health. All households of its programs are screened and audited by local municipalities based on need. Local governments, they cover 20% of costs, while Colel Chabad, get this, makes up the remaining 80% through fundraising efforts and online donations from people like you. So reach into your pocket and donate a few dollars, a few shekels, whatever you can, to our family and friends in Israel. They need us now more than ever. So visit kohelchabad.org/koshermoney, make a one-time or a recurring donation. The link is in the show notes. And on behalf of the people in Israel, thank you. Thank you so much. Now back to this week's episode. Do you find that you have some large donors that are super quiet? They understand the mission, they get it, they realize the community is struggling with inflation, higher pricing, and they're like, I see that you need more. I have what to give. I want to give. Do you see that behind closed doors?
People give what they, what speaks to them.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people who only give to education, or people who only give to other things. Klal Yisrael is very generous,
Mm-hmm.
and yet there's a lot of need.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some individuals that stand out, but you're not talking about a large number of individuals who education is the only thing, and they're going to, put 90% of their money towards it. We've been seeing with colleges, this person got up and said college is now free, and this person got up. It's amazing if we have from people who can start channeling their money in that direction towards whatever speaks to them. It would probably help a lot of different people in different ways. I do want to mention that I have some silent donors, very private and very special, who want to give to someone who falls into a certain category, let's say a Yesoma or something like that, and they will quietly pay that tuition, which takes a tremendous burden off a family. But all done, nobody knows who, nobody knows when, nobody knows where. It's just a silent donor.
I can't imagine the blessings from Hashem for someone who does
someone
that.
Like that. Hashem should keep blessing them. It's one of the most special things I'm part of.
Right. Are grandparents helping out children to help pay for grandchildren?
A lot of grandparents are helping out. A lot.
More than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
No. I don't see that it's more. I just see that those that can are trying their best.
How do you weigh someone who is getting a break, but then their grandparents are taking them on lavish Pesach vacations, things like that? Is that part of how you assess a need, where you say, hey, I know this is not coming from your pocket that you went to such and such destination. Where do you draw the line in terms of someone's finances and how they're going about things.
You got to know that it's really not your business. If someone's parents choose that Yontif is the time they want to spend with family and that's where they want to spend their money, it's not your business. I will tell you that it's very important for us to understand that money is a super sensitive topic. It's not our place to sit and judge beyond what we know to be true as far as tuition. I will also tell you that principals and coordinators and assistant principals should never know what parents pay for tuition. It's not their business, and it should never affect the way they help their child.
I like that. They
should look at everyone as a child that I want to help. It's not their business. I mean, they shouldn't want it to be their business. That's my point. It's normal that we have negias. We're just people. We're not malachim. The less you know about the financial piece, the better. Because every single girl should be welcomed and treated like the girl next to her, regardless of their parents' ability to pay. You know, Hashem's in charge of Parnasa.
What is a radical idea that can potentially solve a lot of this? I know you mentioned colleges, endowments, things of that nature. Is this the best system possible that's in place right now? If you were creating the system from scratch, what would you do differently?
Okay, so there is no one radical idea that could fix the system. Otherwise, it would have been fixed already. There's a lot of smart people in Klal Yisrael. There's a lot of willing to work hard people to fix the problem. I think we can do little things. I know that Baltimore is about to embark on a little thing from a very generous donor who's returning 3.5% of full tuition to parents and hoping to grow that fund so that can be bigger in future years.
Is that yours?
That is every time there's a rocket in Israel. So it surpasses my, sorry.
Yes, no, and it should.
It surpasses my off button. Sorry.
Are you finished?
No. This is actually, we're going to keep this in.
Okay,
What she has an alert that goes off every time there's a rocket in Israel, which is, you live, we'll talk about that.
Sorry. I think it's become easier and easier for us to forget.
Yeah.
What's going on in Eretz Yisrael. So I have an app that every time there's a rocket, I stop and try to think about the people in Eretz Yisrael and the children and the hostages and the parents who are waiting for their children to come home. And we can't forget, guys. We cannot forget.
And even when you silence the phone, that overrides it.
Yeah, it overrides the silent. Yeah.
Wow. Where were we?
We were talking about how to make it easier for parents and solving the tuition crisis. I don't give myself the credit to be able to solve the tuition crisis, but I think each city needs to look at what they can do for their parents to make things a little bit easier. And 3.5% is just a start, but 3.5% is something. And we keep talking about this 3.5%. If parents really push themselves to pay, and then they get a few $100s the week before school starts and they could buy some new stuff for their kids, or they can use it towards their bills, it's something. It's not nothing. And on the other side, they know there are people that care about them. If we would have been able to fix the tuition crisis, I think we would have done that already. But I'm going back to what the Rav of Arvad said. Schools cost money. And paying tuition is part of what you pay for to be a Yid. And I think if we can shift our perspective on that and feel like I've had parents who say to me, it's my greatest honor and pleasure to pay tuition. I am so happy I'm able to do this. It makes us feel good too. You think it feels good that people feel like we want all their money? You think it feels good that people think we're not sensitive? We're super sensitive and we're super caring. We're still trying to run a school. And it really is the obligation of every school to make sure that they have a balanced budget. You can't put things in if you can't pay for them.
When I was leaving Beis Medrash, my Rebbe turned to me, Shmuelfield, and he told me, he said, I want you to remember one thing. If you're able to pay full tuition, do it, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't even have a wife. I don't have kids, And that stuck with me, right? Like, it's almost like a don't ask questions in that sense. I'm not saying there shouldn't be transparency, but he was saying that, like, don't overthink that. You're sending your child, your most precious commodity, to a place for X amount of hours per day. Invest in that, take care of the people taking care of you and your children.
And I have seen parents sacrifice a lot to be able to make school a priority. And we really appreciate that. It doesn't matter if they're paying the minimum or the maximum. It's that attitude of whatever we can do to help you, we want to partner with you.
We spoke about breaks, but is there something in between where you say, okay, you can't pay now, but if you're able to pay later, or when you can pay later, come back to us? Is that ever part of the discussion?
It doesn't really work like that, but it's a relationship. Kamayim hapanim al panim. So if you're sensitive to someone's needs for years on end. And then suddenly, B'chaste Hashem, they get Yerusha or they sell their business. Chances are the places they'll go are the places that were sensitive to their needs. And we've seen that happen many times.
School directors that are listening, I'm sure there are many, and God bless them. What are you doing month to month, year to year to learn what others are doing? Are you going to conferences? Are you looking what's happening in private education outside of the Jewish world? What are you doing to become wiser as you run a large institution?
Okay, so first of all, every single day we try to do it better. I always say, like, COVID for us was a huge bracha because we had a lot of loops that were open and we were able to close them. And in our world, it's called kloops, closing the loops. We were able to really take a step back and look at things and tighten them up in a very positive way. Mostly, I know it sounds silly, but mostly technologically. We got much tighter and much more responsive. Everything suddenly became, here's a way to do this. If you're a parent, if you're a teacher, if you have a need, we're much more responsive because everything is much tighter and runs better. So first of all, keep trying to do it better. Second of all, learn, read, listen, ask, watch, go to conferences, not the ones that are not worth your time. Go to the ones that are worth your time. Learn from other people. Try to do it better. Listen to how other schools are doing things. Try to adopt things that work for your school. And try to invest in your best people because they will do your best work and they will make your school the best as possible. I'm not a big believer in hiring from outside. Look at your teachers. You have an opening, push people up, make people feel good, make people feel appreciated. The culture starts from the top. If you appreciate your staff, they will appreciate their students. They have to feel like you have their back. You are there to support them. You are there to help them, the little things and the big things.
Are the schools doing anything, unaffiliated schools, are they doing anything together to keep costs down? I know we mentioned, hiring the same back office teams, things of that nature. Is there anything realistic that's being done on that front to help bring costs down, or really each entity is on its own and the costs are the costs and there's really no way to collaborate on that?
I haven't seen that. And mostly I think it's because each school has its own distinct culture and you want that to come out also in your business office. So I treat my business office staff like anyone else. When we're closed for students, we're closed for the business office because they're also mothers and they're also trying their best. And that culture that I want to start from the top, it should be for everyone in the entire school. So I need my business office to have the culture of my school. So I can't see that being of great help.
We're entering miscellaneous land. That's the last page of just questions that I didn't really have where to put them in terms of topics, but interesting nonetheless. Do you think, Mrs. Heyman, that schools should encourage or require parents to get term life insurance if receiving a break? If something was to happen to a parent, the school yeshiva would continue to educate the child, no questions asked, though this is a wise way to ensure there are funds to pay the tuition. I'm sure not the first time you've been asked this.
Yeah, but not something we get involved in. They should speak to their Rav. Obviously, I'm a big advocate of living smarter Jewish and those things. We've taught Masila to our girls. It's very important that the girls leave school with an understanding of money and how it works. But it's nothing I would ever require or ask a parent to do. It's a personal decision.
But it's a place, I'll just push back a little bit, not my nature. It's a great place, a great entryway. The entire community is funneling through these schools. So if we can add some sort of, think of it as like an ancillary service that you're providing to educate the parents to get term life insurance, or even mention it. Is that something that, or do you feel it's completely out of place?
I don't feel we could mention it while they're filling out their tuition forms and trying their best to not feel sensitive to the fact that people are looking into their lives. I do think we can mention it other times, like we brought in a speaker from Living Smarter Jewish this year to speak in general about how budgets can help you pay your schools more. And within budgets are these types of things that can help you when chas v'shalom something happens. But I don't feel it's our place to bring it up.
The speaker spoke to the parents or the school?
Both. She spoke to the students. It was Stacy.
Stacy. Oh,
she's amazing.
Yes.
Plug for her. She's great. I love her.
Yeah.
She spoke to the parents and separately to the high school girls.
Yeah. So you mentioned financial literacy and education. As a school director, are you involved in the curriculum?
So I'm very lucky that I have a job that bridges the educational and the administrative piece, because I started out with my daughters there. Baruch Hashem, they all graduated, and I'm still there, which shows how much I love B'nos Yisrael and everything that it represents. Financial literacy is critical for us to teach, really in all divisions on different levels. Certainly when they get to high school, the girls must have some real financial literacy. because we all know from Living Smarter Jewish that it's a big issue that comes up in marriages. And I always tell the girls, you're coming from one place, your husband's coming from another place, and suddenly you're together. Well, it could be that his parents had a completely different attitude towards money, and your parents never spent any money. And how do you make this work? So having an understanding of money is the first step. So I encourage every school, girls and boys, to take advantage and make sure that there's financial literacy taught in their school, because there's no family that will not have a need to understand money better after they get married.
When you were growing up, do you feel like you learned enough financial literacy?
My parents are amazing. My father was a Rebbe for many,
Okay.
many years. We didn't talk about money, but it was nothing we would ever ask for. If we needed money, we would work for it. It's a whole different world. It's a whole different world. I feel like my parents had the perfect balance. We didn't talk about money. We had what we needed, and we never would dream of asking our parents for money. And a lot of that I took with me to my marriage. And my husband came from a family where they did a lot of fun things that we never did. And now I'm in charge of the money. There's a reason for that.
Okay, we'll end off with a couple of fun ones. You hear, at least in non-Jewish circles, about homeschooling. You know, it's not something you find often. I know Rabbi Daniel Lapin, you know, is a proponent of it. Have you seen any growth in homeschooling? Have you looked into it in any capacity? I know you're a director of a school. You probably aren't in love with homeschooling, but it's a question that intrigues some people on certain sides of the scale. Open-ended question.
Open-ended answer. First of all, Rabbi Lapin and his family are very special, and many people have learned and should continue to learn from them. Second of all, there's a social piece to school that is so critical that when we look at every child in our school and we assess their growth, academic is not the most important, because there's social and there's emotional and there's academic. If a child is not doing well socially or emotionally, you will not be able to teach them well. They have to be open for learning. So going to a school that has structure of a school from a social end is super helpful in a way that homeschooling, the best way it's done, there probably is good social, but for some parents, it means a lot of work at home and individualized. I just find that girls specifically, they thrive on the social piece. And even if they start off wanting to be homeschooled, at some point they want to be like everybody else. So as a parent, I'll tell you that socially, you're missing a very big piece if you're not in a regular school environment. And I think that it's part of natural growth. Schools were started a long time ago for a different reason. As you know, they were started for children who didn't have parents, but it's evolved into a very social place that a lot of girls shine out of the classroom also. So what if they're not academic? You know, Hashem didn't make them the smartest. They have an opportunity to shine socially, which is super important for a girl specifically. And that doesn't go away. So if you don't do that the first few years, at some point your daughter's going to want that or ask for that. And then she may be at a disadvantage socially. I do want to say that there are some wonderful homeschooling, programs, and each parent should do what works for them, but they shouldn't ignore this piece. This social and emotional piece is critical. And when you finish school and academics don't matter that much, this part does matter that much.
Love that you said academics don't matter so much as a school director, but
not a big believer in that. Academics matter. Yay, hooray. You're smart. Hashem made you smart.
Right.
Working hard is what matters more than anything else. Grit. We've been talking about this forever. It seems like our children and the parents want to work less, but ultimately you have to be able to grow as a person, to be a kind person, a giving person, a person who's happy with themselves. Then the education is easy. And that's what I mean when I say that in Benos Yisrael, we work hard, that every girl should have a successful school experience. That does not mean that they are at the top of their class academically. Who cares? What matters is if they're growing as a person.
Let's discuss phones for a quick minute. First of all, what's the rule in Benos as it relates to a phone in high school?
You're allowed to have a phone out of school. You're not allowed to bring a smartphone to school. That is in line with our policy that we don't make policies we can't control. And if we would say you cannot have a phone out of school and have no way to control it, then what's the point of the policy?
Right. What's your advice to parents, right? My 6-year-old, as a joke, I think she was joking. She's like, can I get a phone?
She wasn't joking.
Oh, she wasn't.
But you need to be the parent.
Right.
So be very clear about when and how she should get a phone.
I said, you can get one when I got one. She's like, when did you get one? I'm like, 17. She's like, 7? I'm like, no, 17. I'm sure that's very tough for parents. It's a new problem, right?
Really tough.
Smartphone especially, right? 15 years ago was a flip phone. It wasn't as big of an addiction, right? Especially at ages where they're so influential. I'm not even talking about web browsing. I'm just talking about there's a whole social element to it, group chats with friends and things of that. Other dangers aside, what effect do you see on the kids who don't have the phone, right? Their development?
Okay, so this is a very, very hard question because there's peer pressure. I would say most girls, when they get to high school, they have a phone.
Mm-hmm.
I would talk more about what technology has done to our children as far as their ability to stick with something that's hard, their ability to concentrate for long periods of time, their ability to not have an answer right away and be fine with it. Those are all things that matter, and technology has played a pivotal role in making it more difficult. My attitude is the only way that you're going to get your kids to buy in to what you think is the problem is if you can motivate them intrinsically to want something. You can't say, you don't need a phone, you don't want a phone, you can't have a phone. You could say, these are the problems that a phone brings. So let's talk about what rules we could put in place so that you're not different than everyone else and you don't feel like your parents don't get it, but you're also not addicted. And depending on the age, that includes taking away a phone at night or having a very limited phone, especially with boys that go to a school that only allows a certain phone. You need to respect that 100%. The minute a parent doesn't respect the rules of that school, you're basically telling your child you don't believe in the school. So, I have 2 sons who have flip phones with no texting. And probably 3 times a day, they ask for me to add it. I'm not able to, but I'm able to say to them, so let's talk about, why it's complicated and what makes life hard. And it does. And they've been left places, with no ability to get picked up and all that. But then they have the son whose school allows it. He's not available for all the things that the other boys are available for. It's not his fault. Once you have a phone and you're available to be on that phone and your answers are like that and you have what you need and just yesterday we were talking about somebody wanted something, some kind of food, and they're like, it's just Uber Eats it. It's so not a big deal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, remember the days when we went out to eat once a year? In my life, on Sukkot, we got pizza. But if you also don't change with the times and understand what your children are dealing with, then they're not going to want what you want. So it's such a fine line. You have to understand what's out there. You have to understand what's threatening and difficult about what's out there. And then you have to be willing to have those conversations and give in a lot so that your child's not different, but you feel like you could have an open relationship and make it work. And I don't think saying no is going to be the answer when everybody else has it. I also don't think saying yes and not monitoring it is a solution either. There is no way to say that you could control what a child does after they leave your building. You can have expectations, you can have rules, you can discuss it, but don't make rules that nobody can keep and that you can't control if they don't keep. And then it just ends up being one long war that nobody wins. Talk to the girls, make programs where the girls feel like I can do this because I want to do it, not because I'm being forced to do it. And you'll see that schools spend a lot of time and energy and money on technology programs because we want the girls to come to that realization themselves. And I'm going to give a shout out to Ronnie Adjemi, whose name I always say wrong, I'm sorry. He came and spoke to the girls, and many girls made a decision to give away their smartphones and use flip phones because they said to themselves, here's a multi-million-dollar company, and the guy running it is able to do it. So maybe we can too. And even if it's just that they stop for 2 hours a day, those decisions that come from within, those are decisions that are going to last. And I think schools recognize that we want to motivate the girls from within, be it SNEAS, be it what they want to be, when they grow older, be it technology. The changes you make because they have to follow the rules are not the lasting changes. The changes they make because they want to be better people, those changes can last.
I always tell people when I started my company, it was a period where I got rid of my smartphone for almost 2 years. And the focus I was able to have during that time allowed me to just laser in. So there's a ton of value. I mean, I don't know who this Ronnie is, but you just filled up his schedule.
Well, then you should have him on your show.
Yeah?
He is incredible.
Okay, well, look him up. 2 more things before we get to your final thoughts on everything we didn't discuss but should have. Number one is you did mention Living Smarter Jewish, and I know there are a lot of schools listening. They're building out this curriculum for financial literacy. So highly recommend people getting in touch to even just take a look at it.
100%.
Because it can get children and young adults into a much better place when they get into the outside world.
I always say, let's have the wants and needs discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Try have that discussion with 12th graders. Half of them end up crying. Is seminary a want or a need?
Yeah, we had that episode, right?
Right. Remember?
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity for us to educate our girls now that will help them down the line.
Mm-hmm.
We have to really differentiate. We have to be able to have those conversations. Not everything you want is something that I can give you. Not everything you want is something that you need.
Mm-hmm.
There are needs. There are basic needs. And we as parents absolutely have to do our best to take care of those. But then there are things that are wants. Doesn't always work. So if you can teach your children that young and they don't resent you for it and they understand you're not trying to make their lives difficult. You're actually trying to make their lives better. Every school should be looking into financial literacy, boys and girls, not just girls. And I think it's going to help. So I tell my girls when I've been able to teach the financial literacy course, I say, you might not need it now and you might not appreciate it now, but in 2 to 3 years, take out those notes and remember what we discussed. You don't want to be fighting about money. You don't even want to be worried about money. And your attitude towards money when you're growing up, that developing attitude is going to have a huge impact on your life.
If someone did want to get in touch with you, a school director, a parent from Kansas City, I don't know, is there an email address? Is there, you know what, you're dealing with enough emails as it is.
Right.
Can someone possibly get in touch with you?
I think so.
Okay.
Obviously, this is the busiest time of year for any
Right.
school director. We're setting ourselves up for another great year. Business office at benosisrael.org.
Okay, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I will tell you that Benos Yisrael has never turned down a starting school, a new school. How do you do it? What do you do? We just want to help schools do it better. Someone helped us. We learned from our mistakes. You definitely do not need to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
And sometimes I tell new schools, like, this is worth your investment, and they don't believe me and they don't do it. And then they end up spending a lot more money the other way. You know, it's the short path to the long path or the long path to the short path. So learn from the schools that are working hard to do it well because they can save you a lot of time and energy and money, but they're also going to make you spend some money. But it's money that would be well spent. Every school should want to help other schools. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge of everything, our parnasa, our income, and that's going to really wrap this up. Hashem runs the world. We're here as the shluchim of Hashem to take care of your children. And we want to do it in the most sensitive, caring way possible. But we also need to run an organization that is able to pay their teachers and able to pay their bills. So look at it as a partnership where we all want what's best for everybody. And everybody should stretch themselves just a little more on our end and on your end so that together we could bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu nachas.
Mrs. Heyman, thank you so much for joining us. I really
Absolute
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thanks.
Thank you to Mrs. Heyman for joining us. A very insightful episode. We try to cover as many questions as I could submitted by parents. There was so much we couldn't cover. I'm looking at my phone right now. Questions like how much of the tuition is paying for my child versus another child? Is that applicable in every school? For some schools will say that even if you were to pay full tuition and everyone was to pay full tuition, they still would need to fundraise. So you paying for your full tuition doesn't necessarily mean that there's a possible tax deduction, but worth asking your own school. A big component was communication. We spoke about this in the episode. People have questions. If you have questions, ask your school. Someone in Florida wrote in that they have school vouchers now where the government funds a certain amount of money, but then they saw that their particular school raised tuition by a significant percentage. That would be a question for that particular school. Someone asked about they didn't receive their admission card because they were behind on tuition and they did not receive a phone call or any letter in the mail letting them know, and that was pretty embarrassing, which I think is an opportunity for that particular school, if true, to brush up on their PR and their communication. Someone had written in that they were struggling with tuition, and then there was someone in the office or volunteer that called up and said, hey, can you buy a raffle ticket? And they were pretty embarrassed about that, and they said they can't. So maybe removing people that are struggling to pay for tuition from the raffle call list. A lot of the questions or complaints rather that came in didn't sound like anything that's impossible to overcome. People, and I would imagine some schools are different than others. Some people feel very dressed down when they're told to go through their finances. And then if they need another break, some schools are more than willing to give that. And then if they ask for another break, they have to go to the board. And there's a whole lot of moving parts for this, but I did hear a lot of pain in some people's voices. So I heard that. I was very sad when some people were sharing this. So I do recommend to take Mrs. Heyman's advice to heart. This is a very large investment for people. And I loved what Dave Ramsey said, that people should realize that this is an investment. And if this is a priority for you and you're just making it and you're able to pay full tuition, or you're able to give whatever you can give, just scream that out loud and say, hey, I'm doing this for my kids, and I'm doing this for my family, I'm doing this for the future. This is my biggest investment. And it's a whole lot more important than, I would say, a 401k. Okay? If you enjoyed this episode, please give us 5 stars on Apple, Spotify. We're picking 2 people to win a Dave Ramsey book. We did that in the last episode. So if you want to be entered for the chance to win this week, use the word insightful or appreciate in some capacity in the YouTube comment section. Use the words however you'd like, and I'll pick 2 people at random. Congrats to our last 2 winners. They won a Dave Ramsey book, Jane Rucker and Moshe Unger. Hit us up on livinglechaim.com, and we'll get those books out to you, Jane and Moshe. Thank you to the sponsors of this week's episode, Chomesh, our newest sponsor, Twillory, Colel Chabad, and the Donors Fund. Check them all out by clicking on the links in the show notes. And you can find Mrs. Heyman's email address if you'd like to reach out to her, whether from the school side or not. That's an important piece. Communication, right? Visit the OU's livingsmarterjewish.org if you would like help with your finances. There is no shame in that. By the way, we're in the Achdus magazine this week. I don't know if you are in Tom's River, but if you are in Tom's River at the end of August 2024, early September 2024, you might see a cover story featuring Yaakov Langer and his little older brother, Eli. If you'd like to make a one-time or recurring donation at livinglechaim.com/donate, I'm not stopping you. The money you take from your pocket goes into these shows, and we can deliver awesome stuff just like this episode. We got lots more coming. We're doing a grocery episode. We're doing a mental health episode, which is phenomenal, with Dr. John Deloney. I recorded some more. I'm blanking. It's late. This is my second time going through this outro. Don't ask. Long story. It takes time and energy to put this together. Do you know that? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. By the way, on YouTube, we now have premium membership. We have over 20 premium members, so they're getting early access to episodes and more. But if you can't afford it, or just don't want to pay for it because you'd rather put that $20 in your 401k, I tell you, God bless you. Until next time, keep your money kosher. Bye-bye.
Living L'chaim.